I bet a lot of people have that intuition of not wanting to work the 9 to 5, of wanting more, but doing it, that's something else. I think that's really where that 1% comes in. And the fact that you mentioned that you were shy, you didn't want to do this, and you got out of your comfort zone and you went networking and you studied and you went on YouTube and you figured out how can I be the best that I can and meet these potential partners is astronomical. And I just wanted to point that out. I think that alone separates the men from the boys.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we're here with one of my best buds, Sean Phalon. What's up, buddy?
Good to see you guys. Always good to connect with you, Vin.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you here. Guys, little backstory before I let Sean talk about who he is. Because you know what I thought is fun? Ever since I started doing this, I like to tell people if I actually have a good story. So I went to this networking event from this mastermind I joined, and Sean kind of crashed it, but not really, because it was an open space. But he was just chilling at the bar, hanging out by himself. He was blowing a little steam off afterwards, chilling in some shorts and a hoodie. Had a really nice bar, by the way.
Shorts and a hoodie.
That's it. You could tell he's successful because he's dressed like that in a nice place. He's throwing back a few old fashions with some guys, and then I just looked at him. I was like, "Hey, I didn't get to connect with you." He's like, "Oh, yeah. Well, what do you do?" And then we just hit it off, and boom, that's it. Started a really awesome friendship, and I'm really excited about the things he's doing in life, and even more excited to bring his content and his information to all of you guys. So, Sean, without further ado, please introduce yourself to the people. Let them know what you're up to, what you're building, and what you're excited about.
Sure. No, I appreciate that introduction. And just for the record, I did have to call ahead to the lounge and let them know what my attire was before they would allow me to come in. And since I've been back like 5 times, it's one of my favorite lounges. Shout out to Ascent Lounge on Columbus Circle in New York City. It's a great place to meet good people, apparently. So yeah, my name is Sean Phalon. I am our Executive Growth Officer and National Sales Manager for Brighton Bank, and I've been in the banking and finance industry for almost 14 years now. And I also run another company called Flex Ventures, where we source, capitalize, and structure partnerships around using mid-sized distressed real estate portfolios and add value to them and try to make a little bit of money.
Love it. How did you start getting into this? There's a very interesting space that you're in, and I can't say me personally that I know anybody else that's really doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so I guess a quick history lesson. When I was 19, I'd finished 1 year of college, and I don't want to say I hated school, I just wasn't a big fan of it at all. And so I really wanted to go into architecture. I was thinking of actually going into the Marines, and a bunch of my cousins in the Marines. And so, but I didn't really want to wait. I'm not a patient person. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to get into an industry that I think can make me some money so that I can eventually do what I maybe really want to do, because I didn't have the money to go to school, and I didn't want to sign up in the Marines for 4 years, right? And so I had to talk to my father about it, and he's one of those kind of parents. He's a great parent, and he said, listen, you can do whatever you want to do, but whatever it is, you got to own it, whatever decision you make, right? And don't blame me for it or anybody else. And so I said, let me get into finance, because people are either going to need something to do with their money or they need money, one of the two, right? Mm-hmm. That will never end. And so I just connected with a friend of family who was in the insurance and financial advising space. I wasn't real keen on that, but we were starting to broker mortgages at the time. That was when a lot of the new mortgage laws were changing, and you could still dabble in it a little bit. And that was the one thing that I was kind of interested in out of all of the products and services that we were doing at the time. And I putzed around in that world for about 1.5 years, learned some things, and then eventually I needed to get a job due to life circumstances. And so after applying to 63 job applications in 2 days, 2 mortgage companies called me back based upon my resume, and I interviewed them back to back. About 2 weeks later, and took the job with one of them, and kind of the rest is history. So that's how I got into the lending world. And then, ironically, as you move along in that industry, you come across a lot of real estate deals, distressed issues with portfolios off of banks, you need asset managers, real estate developers, as you're doing a lot of real estate financing, which is really what I specialized in for a very long time and still do. And about 7 or 8 years ago, that began to come to fruition. And so the goal was to really hang on to those contacts for opportunities in the future. And in the last few years, those things have blossomed. And as time goes on now with Brighton, we took 3 mortgage guys from Jersey to come in and really add some value to the bank, which we did about 2.5 years ago. And so we're moving forward, going strong.
I want to ask about the banking industry because I'm very curious, and I don't know how truthful you really want to get, but I hear horror stories, especially from big banks right now, like with Chase. Before that, I wanted to make a comment here that you took a traditional job, a 9 to 5, a corporate setting, and you saw an opportunity 7 and 8 years ago to make a better opportunity for yourself, and you took it. If you can dive back into 7, 8 years ago, where you first started your entrepreneurship mindset, your shift, you're out of the world for the 8 to 5, what made you take that first leap? Was it money? Was it the right people? Like, what was it that pushed you? Because we talk to so many people that have these ideas, that want to become entrepreneurs, that want to become business owners, and they're dreamers. They're not doers. How did you shift that mindset?
Yeah, so I don't know if I ever shifted it. Anybody who knows me really well and has known me since I was a kid would probably tell you that I like to do my own thing my own way. So that's kind of in the DNA, I guess, and I think it's in every entrepreneur's DNA. I think we're all a little rebellious to some extent, and we don't like to be told what to do, and we'd rather fail and learn it the hard way than take some people's advice, right? And I think we're all still probably learning that. So that's always been a little bit part of me. I've always wanted to do my own thing, and to some extent, I think every entrepreneur has a healthy level of delusion. And what I mean by that is that you truly think that you can do something. You truly think that if you come across a good enough opportunity, you can figure it all out and you're going to capitalize on it. And that's always been a belief. I've never worried about finding great opportunity or capitalizing on it. I've always believed there's much, much more out there than any person could handle. And so when it came to getting into this banking and financing and mortgage world, I was dreading networking. I like to know the technicalities of things. I like things to be predictable, but I was also I was very, very shy, and I did not want to be shaking hands and kissing babies and doing that sort of thing. But about 4 years into the mortgage business, I shifted. I went from much more of a corporate setting to starting my own thing, running my own branch, my own team, and I had to go out there and get business. There was no choice about it, and so it forced me out there. And in doing so, I actually found out that I was pretty good at it, and I really liked it. And you begin meeting a lot of other people in other segments of the industry. So the first thing I learned was I'm going to the wrong networking events, right? Because these are not the right people for the product and the service that I offer. But what it did open up was a whole nother side to the industry, which is I finance the end product most of the time, right? But there's people who are dealing in the bedrock of the industry, which is the development, it's the land sourcing, it's the approvals, it's the deal sourcing, it's the planning, it's the redevelopment of an area, and you can fill in the blanks there. And that really fascinated me. And getting to the source of it all was something I always really wanted to do. And so through over the years of networking, learning it, sitting there with YouTube videos till 1 or 2 in the morning, right, the things that nobody sees. Now someone can probably do that in ChatGPT in about 25 minutes, what took us years to do. But through the networking, that's really where it was. And I found the one thing that I was dreading and hating was actually the one thing that put me in a really good place.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. And I think you're over analyzing the, I bet a lot of people have that intuition of not wanting to work the 9 to 5, of wanting more, but doing it, that's something else. I think that's really where that 1% comes in. And the fact that you mentioned that you were shy, you didn't want to do this, and you got out of your comfort zone and you went networking and you studied and you went on YouTube and you figured out how can I be the best that I can and meet these potential partners is astronomical. And I just wanted to point that out. I think that alone separates the men from the boys. So now the comfortable, uncomfortable, where I'm just very curious about this banking world in today's society. In a nutshell, do you think the banking systems and traditional paper money currency is going to last? And if so, for how long? And I'm sure you weren't expecting these curveball questions, but I'm very curious because it's not very often that I get to talk to somebody, who's on the top of even if it's a small personalized bank. I don't get to talk to them very much. So I'm curious on what your thoughts are on this.
Vin, you promised no gotcha questions. That's a really good question. You know, it's funny, Shane. Whenever I get a chance to talk to somebody who's like completely outside the banking space, everybody wants to talk about the validation of currency as it currently is in the world. And it started, obviously when Bitcoin became really popular. So it's actually become a more common question where I'm like, oh, okay, they're asking the same thing. And listen, the short answer is nobody really knows. My personal opinion is I don't ever think that the currency that we have and the way we see it today will ever go away in that medium, meaning that it's backed by something, whether tangible or intangible, and that the note, the dollar bill you hold in your hand, is a medium of exchange of that value. I don't think that concept is ever going away, because that's actually what money actually is, right? Money is ascribed value based upon either its rarity, thus value, or its utility in the world, right? I think it's the tiniest little gram, and I'm not an astrophysicist, but the tiniest little bit of antimatter is worth like $64 trillion, right? Well, who's to say what the value of that is, right? If there was a lot of it in the world, just like there is copper or silver or whatever, right, there's an exchange to it. So I think, for example, Bitcoin, not that I'm an expert at Bitcoin, I definitely am not, but any type of cryptocurrency or any type of currency that has value ascribed to it simply because of its utilization, it's the same thing. It's just the utilization isn't based upon rarity. It's based upon how you can fluidly move and spend said currency. So hopefully that's a good way of answering that question.
It is. I don't think that the US dollar is backed by anything. Now, you asked me that question in the 70s when it backed precious metals, right? When it actually had some tangible value. I'd say, okay, I could see that. But when we're talking about, like a paper currency, I think I'm agreeing with the standpoint. I think we're so adapted with the USD worldwide that we're so invested into these other countries and they're invested into us that it's so adopted that if it ever does go away, it's going to take 10 to 20 years. But I'm actually agreeing with you on the actual cryptocurrency aspect too. And I just wanted your opinion. So I'll stop being the bulldog aspect from there too. I was just very curious on what you thought. And I'm glad you
you said a really good point, right? Which is, even if our currency, the US dollar, is not backed by jack squat, right? You open the vaults in Fort Knox and there's mice running around in there,
right?
Or whatever. At that point, to your point, because the way it's exchanged through us as a country and our economic system, right, it has utility.
Right.
The same way
that's what I'm agreeing with you.
Right. It's the same exact thing. I mean, frankly, at one point there was a study done, and it was some remote island where they were actually using clamshells, the size of them and the thickness and the weight of them as money to exchange.
Now we're bringing it back thousands of years ago, too.
Right. So again, what's the ascribed value on that? It's simply a record keeping, and that's simply what the dollar bills are in your hand. It's just a record. Yeah.
It's actually a good analogy right there. I like that.
So, Sean, what does it? I mean, I guess currently where you stand, can you tell the audience, like, how many people do you currently have under you within your organization? How many locations do you have? And then a little bit about what it takes to actually scale to the size that you're at. I'm sure people are curious, or at least I am.
Sure. So right now, I oversee the sales force that puts all of our lending out there on the street. Some other folks as well inside the bank. It's about 135 people, give or take. As we grow, it can go up, right? As we adjust, it can go down. But give or take, about 135 folks under my leadership. With that is 10 different teams within that 135. So it's about 10 other leaders in between myself and the majority of the Salesforce, loan officers, support staff, and whatnot. You know, I'll be honest with you, until we had taken on this bank as really our jobs and our project, I had never scaled something to that extent before. And I think that's important for people to know. I did not come from a situation where I had even 50 or 60 employees under me, right? I had come from situations where I had 16 to 20. I had come from situations where I had maybe 30 at the most, right? But not in the 100 plus. And right now, what we do is we're in one central location, but we have over 150 employees working remote. And now think about that for a minute. So we began when we took over this role at Brighton Bank. We began to recruit in a big way. Made a major push for it, and everything that we were doing was all remote. And I'm an in-person person. I like having my staff right down the hall from me. I don't like not knowing what people are doing. It's probably that control freak entrepreneur side of me coming out. So when it came to going to a new position, managing a bunch of new people, and 80% of them never even meeting before, never even shaking their hands, that was a wild concept. So to your point about scaling to where you're at, I think one of the most important aspects of scaling is to know how your organization can scale in the industry and in the time of the industry that you're in, right? For example, we don't want to be adding overhead. We wanted to run lean and mean. We were running a new sales concept out there. So we didn't want to invest in a bunch of hardline costs for it, right? We were trying to do a very robust recruiting model, and we wanted to stick with as low of a cost, but as wide of a cast as possible. And so what's the best way to do that? You go remote. You go 3 states over. You go thousands of miles away, right? You take whoever believes in the model into the model so that they can work the model, right? That was our perfect avatar as somebody who was building this, right? We had to look outside of the conventional. Okay, do they run a P&L? Do they have multiple teams? Do they have 5 support staff? Do they have 20 salespeople under them? How can we absorb them? We had to look well beyond that and figure out that they're not the kind of person that we necessarily want to go after in the beginning. Now we could, because we're in a different place. But in order to scale, we had to understand where we were at and what was best for the bank's model, and not try to get all caught up with, well, we have this great recruit, but they're running a different model. Can we adjust our model and adjust theirs? I was never really interested in that, because I think speed when you're growing is a major part of your advantage, especially if you can pivot very, very quickly, and trying to constantly reinvent the business model that you have in order to grow, or in order to bring on more people you can grow, is the kiss of death. It really is, right? I think you need to be adaptable, but there is the core of your business model. And so we said no to a lot of things in order to say yes to continue to develop the business model. And that's what allowed us to grow from about 30, 35 people to at one point 142 in about 10 months.
So, all right, Shane, hold on.
You know where I'm going with this, right? I mean, come on.
All right, fine. You know what? Go ahead. Ask your question. I'll come back. Go ahead.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned this. So as a virtual assistant company owner, right, I have over 500 employees. In 2019, every single business re-envisioned the in-house employee. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, because they're looking for ways to continue to be profitable with less liability, that they can work from home. This is the future. This is how it's going. Where's it going to go in 5 to 10 years with AI and robotics? That's the next question. But the big thing to point out here is adaptation, is evolvement. So mine was a comment. That was pretty much it. I applaud that, even for something like the banking, to get something where it's so hands-on and physical. I mean, I'm very curious on the 135 employees, what they're doing on remote, if it's just sales and actually bringing on the lending aspect there. But I'm just happy that they're even being open-minded about that they're not having to crack the whip and being like 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, get in the door so I can, micromanage every aspect of your day. That wasn't like that 10 years ago, 5 years ago. COVID happened, evolvement. That's what happened.
Well, I heard a quote one time that really kind of sticks with me, and it's that limitations drive innovation. And so, if the limitation is we don't want to be adding overhead, we don't want to be signing 20 different commercial leases across the country, right? We don't want to be buying office furniture to fill several dozen office spaces. We need to keep our numbers at a certain place. We need to run lean and mean. If there's all of these restrictions, right, that we have placed, whether circumstantially or self-placed upon ourselves, you have to figure out a way how to play within those boundaries, right? Even in sports, right? The NFL has changed a number of their rules as far as receiving, how they can charge off during a kickoff, a punt return, and so on and so forth, right? You don't see everybody else fighting about it for the next two or three seasons. You see the teams adapting and changing the game plan around it, and so that'll create new positions. That's going to create different strategies. That's going to create different plays all around just that one sector. And even in our industry, again, those limits, whether industry wide or just within the company, I put the blinders on. I don't really care what another company does. I care what we're doing, right? And I care if our business model is working for the structure that we put in place, and we want to go all in on that. And maybe if it's very simple and we don't have some of the same things that another company has, or we can't do some of the same things another company does, that's perfectly fine. I can simply market more of what we can do to the right salespeople that can market to the right consumers, right? And so that's kind of always been my mindset when it comes to these things is, shoot the bullets that you have, right? You're only constantly looking for the best thing. We don't product chase. We don't business model chase, but we fire off what we can fire off and do that well in order to scale it.
It's my turn. Is it my turn now?
What more is to say? He said it perfectly.
Vin, can you please ask me a question?
I feel like I'm gonna raise my hand, but I think my arm will get tired by the time it finally gets called on.
So I love this guy, man.
Shane's gonna mute your mic, man.
I have to remember, most of the people I bring on the show are my friends, so I get plenty of time with you guys. Shane gets to be the excited puppy. You guys can spend more time talking and conversating. You're right. I'm sorry for even wanting to participate here. So here's my curiosity. I've always found scaling a business is difficult. Having remote workers is difficult. Doing it rapidly, like it took you in this 10-month time frame, and of course, finding out all of these constraints and these systems and these processes in business, it's all well and good to go through that stuff. But I think, and I'm most curious about this, is I think that it takes a lot as a leader to be able to lead effectively. And it takes a lot of that personal work, that personal development, that growth. And I'm just curious, how did you have to evolve, aside from the business side, the systems and the processes? How did you personally have to evolve to be in a space where you were capable of managing so many people in such a rapid and evolving industry, organization? What kind of mindset did it take? How did you have to look inwards? Like, what was that process like for you personally?
Yeah. Oh man, what a good question. Because it was new, right? The role wasn't new, but the scale of it was very new, right? Which means the role is different. And I think first and foremost, recognizing when a role is different is really important. Meaning, you cannot run the same organization the same way that you did with 30 people that you will with 70. You can't do it. Your role is going to be different. Your responsibilities, what looks like a successful week is very different when the numbers double or even increase by 30 or 40%. So I think recognizing when that role is truly different is very important. The reason why I say it sounds so like elementary, but you've got even some of the best leaders out there, people who've accomplished much. They look to scale, they look to make a major pivot in their company. and then they continue to try to do it the same way they've been doing it. And sometimes it is simply not possible just because of the timeline, or the volume of people, or the volume of transactions. It's just not possible to do. And so recognizing that was really, really important. And then identifying what success looks like. What does success look like from me running 2 or 3 different teams at one point with maybe a couple dozen people at the most, to running a bunch of, and by the way, all of which I can like even drive a little distance to see if I really wanted to, right? As opposed to not meeting the majority of the team, only on phone calls and video calls like this, right? Identifying what that success actually looks like, even down to just a couple small things. And so a lot of it was outlining what that leadership looked like. Is it more important for me to instill the structure that we have and to make sure they understand it and are working on it? Or is it more important for me to allow them the freedom to develop the business that they want to, and as they develop it, do those checks and balances within the system, right? Am I more of a teacher, or am I more of a course corrector, right? Am I more of a motivator, right? Or am I more of, a fixer, a problem solver? And so understanding that is really, really important. For me, it was understanding those things, like, and I can tell you right now, I'm a problem solver at heart, for sure. To come up with a solution to things, it definitely brings me a lot of happiness to do so. But at my core, I'm a business structurer. That's what my really my best aspect is, right? Even down to even structuring and finding the real estate deals, right? I'm a business structurer. I like to simplify, structure, and scale. That's what I'm good at, right? And so I think understanding, if you're going into a role, what you're actually really good at, not what you've done, and this is really important, not what you spent the most time on in your previous roles, but what you're actually good at in that. Well, I've been managing these 3 divisions. Yeah, but what was your skill set in that, right? Are you just super organized and great at creating systems, right? Are you a great trainer and a great manager? Were you such a great motivator and coach to the sales team that, one bit of involvement from you can drive sales forward? Like, what was your biggest impact? I don't think leaders are good if they're well-rounded. That sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I don't think great leaders are well-rounded. I think great leaders are highly focused on their skill sets, and they can impart that into the people that they lead. So for me, I'm good at structuring. I can sit down with one of our managers who's having trouble with his or her team. I can figure out solutions. I can figure out ways to bring in more people, figure out cost solutions for them, staffing solutions, how to drive more production from one team member or another. That's what I'm good at. And so a lot of my role there was a structurer and much more of a coach to the team. So a successful week, instead of just driving production, really turned into being a successful coach and structurer with the managers that I was placing underneath my leadership, so they could continue to have the freedom to develop and build their own sales teams, because they wanted that ownership as well. The perfect example then, like that's my organization, right? That's going to look very different from somebody who's a different structure.
I absolutely love everything that you said, because a big part of why people bring me in to work with their organizations is usually because they get stuck right there. And what I've learned about leadership is that there are these different levels to move up the chain. And as you pointed out, going from here to here is always going to require a different skill set or a different information set or a different way of showing up. And most of these leaders tend to get stuck in, being a producer as opposed to being a people developer. And it sounds like you've really embraced that role of developing people, because you've been able to understand, separate, and live the different versions or the different identities that are required of you as it goes into scaling a business. And I'm just curious, what for you, like, this was obviously something you learned. Did you get this from, and this could be a very simple answer if you would like it to be, did you get this from just having the experience and kind of figuring it out and being like, oh, this isn't working? Or was it like, did you have to read a book, get a course? Like, some people are so, oh, I got to go to Harvard Business School and I got to learn to be an entrepreneur. And, I've always been a big fan of lived experience. What's your view on that?
I think, and again, this is my personality, I think doing always trumps analysis any day of the week. I'm definitely an action taker, for sure. I think the longer I've done this and as I've gotten older, I've gotten more analytical, maybe even overthinking at times now, because you have more to preserve and you have more people depending upon you and their livelihood, and you can make a decision that can hurt or harm them, frankly, right? And so you want to be a little bit more careful. But as far as really kind of adjusting to that, I mean, listen, one of the answers is, I mean, I was raised very, very well. I'll just be honest with you. My father, world class dad, and he actually his living is he's been a pastor for almost 30 years now, here in New Jersey. And him and I are very, very different when it comes to our personalities and our ambitions. He's much more of a small group, one-on-one kind of a person, whereas I like to swing the sword wide and do big things, and I'll just die trying, right? And that's all there is to it, right? But as I grew up, having somebody who was there to really just kind of know the things I was good at, my flaws and everything else, but could lean and encourage me into what I did very, very well. And that's the kind of father he was really impactful, because then as time goes on, I become a teenager at college, my one grand year of college, and then into career and so on and so forth, right? You begin looking for people around you who can find and pinpoint what you're good at and want you to embrace that. The same way that really the most prominent leadership figure in my life, which was my father, did. And so that led me to, as I look through for leadership in other places, even in my career and job, I'm looking for somebody who instills that same kind of thing in me, to say, hey, you're good at this. I think you have a great skill set in this. And I go, yes, I know I can do those things. Here's what's going to be required of you. Here's why I think you're going to be a good fit. I'm looking for someone who believes that. And so when you have that kind of support, not only laterally on either side of you, but also above you, right? People who are bringing you into a role, that makes a huge impact, because you can hold on to a very simple belief, which is somebody other than yourself. Because I can fool myself. I can be delusional and think I'm horrible at this, or I can think I'm great at this, and neither one of them are true. But if somebody else can see that and instill that belief, I think it's just really important for anybody in leadership to find that person, which is why people look for mentors, right? But if you can find that person who is there in the mud, in the trenches with you, who has instilled and will instill that belief in you, I think that's really, really powerful. Because there's going to be bad days. There have been bad days. There have been bad months. There have been times where I'm like, oh my goodness, right? This person's driving me nuts. This is the wrong hire. This is definitely the wrong hire. It's definitely my fault that this person is here right now. We totally screwed up on handling this situation. I'll never do this again. That's for sure. But when you can go back to the core of it, that somebody else has seen that and wants you to continue to develop that, it really is a safety place in your own psyche, that you understand that you are capable of this. You can do this, right? It's not perfection we're after, it's progress. And growing up in that, training myself to look for that as I branch out into more opportunities, has really been a powerful thing. And it's something, honestly, Ben, that I didn't realize probably until I took this role 2.5 years ago.
Sean's dropping bombs, Ben. Sean's dropping bombs. Can I make one statement? Because it's really towards everything that you said.
Go for it.
First off, not many people are blessed with the childhood and the mentorship that you have had and you continue to have. And I really want to bring up the mentorship from personally somebody who grew up in a broken family, primarily raised by my mom. That's what drove me to have a better life, to not want to live the way that I did. And at certain points in my entrepreneurship after these past 10 years, you come to bottlenecks. You come to caps that you just don't know how to overcome. And searching help in mentorship, in coaching, is my very first point that I tell people. You need to find somebody that's been in a place where you want to be at. And more importantly, you need to vet them. You need to make sure that you feel comfortable opening up, telling them where you're at. And you need to make sure that they're going to reciprocate and give good advice. right? Almost like a father figure. This is what I believe very few coaches can do, right? And Ben and I love talking about this on our podcast here about, the 1% of coaches and bad coaches and good coaches. But I think it's very great to point out what a great coach / mentor / leader can do for you personally and or for your businesses.
I love it, man. Well, we're getting very close to our end time
Damn
here,
it.
so I want to make sure, 'cause we got three last questions for you. So let's jump into that real quick. So question number one is, I would love to know, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
You mentioned this earlier, and I should have actually been thinking about it.
I'm expecting a good one too, because I know Dad's
yeah, see.
I know Dad's coming in hot.
No, don't screw it up. No, I think, I mean, I don't know if it's a piece of advice. I guess I would go back. You know, to the way I was raised, and we were raised with a very simple principle, which was that if you simply commit to something, you have the free will and you have the power of choice. That every single person on this earth has a power of choice. That sounds all like you rude, Tony Robbins or whatever. But I think that there's a lot more power in that than we think. Even in business, 6-7 years ago, if you told me that, well, you should set aside time for this or that, I would have fought you on it and said, heck no, there's no way. You don't understand how busy I am. You don't understand what's required of me. And I went through a few things some years ago. I went through a divorce. I went through really changing it completely, my schedule, my lifestyle, how I did things, even how I ran my business. And that was all right on the heels of us taking over this bank. And so my role completely changed, personal life and professional life, everything completely changed. And a very good mentor of mine told me, he said, you'll adapt. He said, you simply choose how you're going to do things. He goes, and you build your business around that. And I'm like, yeah, I know everyone says that there's no way you can do it. And then when I was put in that position, I had to. And I swear up and down by it now that choice is a lot more powerful in business than our personal lives that we think. And we choose what we allow. And I think we have a lot more ability to make our lives better when we take that ownership.
I love it, man. Always dropping wisdom for everybody.
So I don't know. I'm just I'm not dropping. I'm regurgitating.
It's okay. You're dropping it. It's falling out of your mouth onto the floor.
You're saying it, man. It's awesome.
That's it. That's all it is. So, Sean, here's another question for you. What is your version of a 1% life? As you know, the name of our podcast is The 1%, but it is based on the fact that, you don't have to be a billionaire to be a 1%er. It's really just about, how do you show up striving to be the best you could be in any way, category, or form? And so I'm curious for you as to what your version of a 1% life might be.
Oh, yeah. Freedom to be with my family and to live the kind of life I want, when I want, and how I want. And that's not in a, I can do whatever I want type of thing. I don't have to do work. But it's doing the type of work I want to do, the type of work that I'm good at, that I enjoy, and spending that amount of time with my family and being free to do so. This is why I'm so big on like the real estate stuff, and I've gotten so much farther into that because, being able to structure businesses and whatnot, like time is very, very precious. It really, really is. And it's a thing that life's made of. And so more now than ever, if you said, what's the best life or top 1% life, it's having the freedom to be with my family, to invest in them, and setting up business and everything else that comes along with that, structured around that, building life from the inside out, not the outside in. And I think that's a big problem that we've been trained up, which is you go to school, you go to college, not getting on college, just in case anybody watches and thinks I am. I absolutely am not. But you go to college, you get a job, you do this and you do that. And what that is training everybody to do is to build life from the outside and not to make decisions, choice, and to say, I will do this, I will not do this, here's what I want for my life, here's the foundation and building blocks, and I will now choose and make choices around such, right? We might call those things convictions or whatever that we believe. And that's my version of that 1% life.
I love it, man. And our last question for you is this: how can people get in touch? How can they do more with you? Where could they learn more about you, the organization? What are some of the best methods for people who would like to, I guess, be in your ecosystem?
Yeah, we're always looking for other great people to go to the bank with. So they can find me. I would say this is horrible, right? Talk about unproductivity. The best way to get a hold of me is actually messaging me through Instagram, okay? Which is Phalon, my last name, Phalon forward FWD, all one word, Phalon forward. That's my Instagram handle. I don't like to give my number out to too many people, although it's out there on the internet in enough places already. But that's usually the best way for people to get in touch with me. And we've recruited, we've built teams through that. We've brought in investors for real estate projects through that, all kinds of things. So that's the best way to get in touch with me.
That's it. You want to get involved in a multi-million-dollar real estate deal? Shoot the man an Instagram DM.
To be honest, it's 2025. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
I personally love it. Some people I conversate with, I still don't even have their phone numbers. We literally just talk through Instagram.
Dude, what is this, 1980? Come on. No, nobody does phone calls anymore. I should do the corded call and just, hang by the fridge. What's up, Sean? Sliding in those DMs, baby.
There you have it,
my
folks.
DMs.
There you have it. Everything does, in fact, go down in the DMs.
Pretty good.
It's like, you trying to hit on me? No, I'm trying to get into that real estate. So everybody, as you heard it here, Sean has a lot of really amazing things he's doing. He has some great opportunities. If you have the capacity to do stuff with him, I highly encourage you to do so. He's very knowledgeable, as you can see. He really knows his stuff, and he's going to do a lot of amazing things on top of the amazing things he's already doing. So shoot him an Instagram DM, connect with him. And as always, thank you so much for listening to another one of our episodes. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you. And join us next time for another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And that was Sean, everybody. See you later.
Thanks, guys.